Have you ever looked at the man you've shared years with and quietly wondered, where did he go? I don't mean physically. He's still there. He still goes to work. He still sits beside you in the evening. Yet somehow, the man who used to tell you what he was thinking, what he was worried about, what he hoped for, just seems harder to reach. And if you've ever felt that, you'll know how lonely it can be. Because you're not grieving someone who's gone, you're grieving someone who's still sitting right beside you. You know, over the years, I've been asked all sorts of questions about relationships. But one comes up again and again. Why doesn't he talk to me anymore? Most people think the answer is obvious. If he loved me, he'd open up. And sometimes, that's true. But I honestly don't think it's the answer most of the time. I think it's usually much more complicated than that. And once we begin to understand why someone goes quiet, we often start seeing the relationship differently. Here's something that surprises a lot of couples. Silence doesn't always mean love has disappeared. Sometimes, it's the only way someone knows how to cope. Now, for many women, talking creates closeness. When something feels wrong, you want to talk it through. You want to understand what's happened. You want to feel close again. So when the man you love suddenly becomes quieter, it's only natural to move towards him, to ask, "Are you all right? Is something bothering you? Can we talk?" I think most of us would do exactly the same. But I've noticed that many men respond very differently when they're under emotional pressure, when they feel overwhelmed or disappointed in themselves, when life isn't going the way they'd hoped, or they're frightened they'll say the wrong thing. Their instinct isn't always to move closer. Sometimes it's to become quieter. Not because they don't care, not because they've stopped loving you. Sometimes they simply don't know what to do with what they're feeling. And that's the part that's so easy to misunderstand. Because when you're the one waiting, that silence feels deeply personal. It feels like rejection. It feels as though you're being shut out. But here's something that's easy to miss. Silence and indifference aren't always the same thing. So if it isn't always about love disappearing, what is that silence protecting? I actually think this often begins much earlier than we realize. Think about the messages so many boys grow up with. Be strong. Don't complain. Handle it yourself. Just keep going. Whether those messages were spoken or simply learned by watching the people around them, many boys grow up believing difficult feelings are something you deal with alone. So years later, when life becomes overwhelming, silence feels safer than vulnerability. Not because they don't love you, because it's familiar. Now, understanding that doesn't mean your loneliness isn't real. It doesn't mean you ignore your own needs. Not at all. It simply helps us understand what might be happening beneath the silence. And sometimes, that small shift in understanding is enough to change the conversation. Because relationships need more than practical support. They need emotional safety. And if someone has never really learned how to talk about fear, or shame, or disappointment, silence can become the safest place they know. Now, here's a conversation that plays out in so many homes. She says, "You seem different lately." He replies, "I'm all right." "Are you sure?" "Yeah, I'm just tired." And that's where the conversation ends. Maybe you've lived that conversation yourself. She walks away feeling shut out. He walks away feeling relieved the conversation is over, but also guilty that he couldn't explain what was going on. Neither of them wanted that ending, yet it happens every day. And before long, a pattern begins. One person reaches, the other retreats. The more anxious one becomes, the quieter the other often gets. She feels abandoned. He feels like he's letting her down. Neither one is trying to hurt the other, yet both end up hurting. The difficult part is, this rarely happens overnight. Life gets busy. Work becomes demanding. Children need attention. Parents grow older. Bills still need paying. Before you know it, most of your conversations are about running a life, rather than sharing one. What time's your appointment? Did you pick up the groceries? Don't forget the electricity bill. They're the conversations every couple has. But somewhere along the way, the conversations that bring you closer begin to disappear. And that's often when I hear women quietly say, "I feel lonely, even though I'm not alone." If you've ever felt that, please know you're certainly not the only one. Now, before we finish, I do want to make one important point. Not every man who withdraws is emotionally overwhelmed. Sometimes it's stress, sometimes anxiety, sometimes depression, sometimes emotional exhaustion, and sometimes it really is emotional disengagement. Those situations aren't all the same, which is why I think the better question isn't, how do I get him to talk? Maybe it's, what's stopping him from talking? Because once you understand that, you begin to understand what might actually help. I hope today's conversation has helped you see his silence from a slightly different perspective. It won't answer every question, but sometimes seeing something differently is the first step towards changing it. Next time, I'd like us to talk about what actually helps when someone withdraws. Should you give him space? Should you keep reaching out? How do you know when patience is helping and when it's simply keeping you stuck? We'll explore those questions together. If today's conversation resonated with you, I'd genuinely love to hear your thoughts in the comments. Your story might be exactly what another woman needs to hear. And if you enjoy these conversations, why not subscribe and join me here each week at the Women's Shed? Until next time, take good care of yourself. I'm Bernie. I'll see you again soon. Cheers.